The transport shuttle descended through the purple atmosphere of Talros 9, carrying the newest student to the Galactic Academy. Inside, a young man named Daewon pressed his face against the window, watching the massive structure come into view. The Academy floated in orbit around the moon, a city-sized station that housed thousands of students from hundreds of different alien species. Daewon was 19 years old, shorter than most humans, with dark hair and quiet eyes. He carried only a small bag with his belongings. His hands trembled slightly as the shuttle docked, but not from fear. He was excited. Earth had waited 3 years since joining the Galactic Council for this moment. He was the first human student ever accepted to the Academy. The airlock opened with a hiss. Daewon stepped into the receiving area and immediately felt every eye turn toward him. The corridor was filled with alien students of every shape and size. Some had scales, others had fur. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Many were twice his height. A few were 3 times his size. A massive creature with reptilian features and dark green scales stepped forward. This was Taesung, a Vraxian warrior student. He looked down at Daewon and laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the corridor. "This is what Earth sends? This tiny soft creature?" Taesung's voice boomed. Other students joined in the laughter. Daewon said nothing. He simply nodded politely and tried to move past, but Taesung blocked his path with one massive arm. "In my culture, we greet warriors with a test of strength. Show me your power, human." "I'm not here to fight," Daewon replied calmly. "I'm here to learn." This brought more laughter. Taesung finally stepped aside, but his eyes followed Daewon with obvious contempt. "Weak," he muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. The first week at the Academy was brutal for Daewon. Every class revealed another way that humans were inferior to other species. In the strength trials, he could barely lift weights that other students tossed around like toys. He ranked in the bottom 5% of all species for raw physical power. During speed tests, he was left behind within seconds. His reflexes were decent, but nothing special. The only test where he performed well was endurance. He could run for hours when others needed to rest. But the other students dismissed this as unimportant. "What good is running long if you run slow?" they said. In combat class, Instructor Velmoth, a 6-armed Keltorian with gray skin, organized sparring matches. Daewon was paired with a small, insect-like student named Kip, one of the few species smaller than humans. Even then, Kip moved so fast that Daewon couldn't land a single hit. The match ended in 30 seconds. "The human is too slow," Velmoth announced to the class. "Slow body, slow mind. Next pair." But that night in advanced mathematics class, something different happened. The instructor presented a complex problem about spatial navigation through gravitational fields. It was a calculation that required understanding multiple variables simultaneously. The class fell silent. Even the brightest students struggled with the equations. Daewon raised his hand. "The answer is 47.3 degrees on the vertical axis with a velocity adjustment of 12,000 meters per second. The instructor checked the calculations. Her expression changed. "That's correct. How did you solve it so quickly?" "I visualized the problem," Daewon explained. "Humans are good at pattern recognition and spatial thinking." A female Vraxian named Hee-Jin sat near the back of the class. She had noticed this human before, always quiet, always alone. Now she watched him with new interest. Her scales were a lighter green than Taesung's, and her eyes held more curiosity than cruelty. But the other students quickly forgot about Daewon's academic success. Physical strength was what mattered at the Academy, and by that measure, humans were nothing special. The bullying intensified. Students began calling Daewon the soft one. They excluded him from study groups. Someone put a substance in his food that made him sick for 2 days. His training equipment disappeared mysteriously, and when he reported it, nothing was done. Through it all, Daewon remained calm. He spent his evenings alone in his quarters, working on personal projects. Sometimes Hee-Jin would see him in the library late at night, reading everything he could about different alien cultures and technologies. He took detailed notes. He asked questions that showed deep understanding. And sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, he would activate a small device and speak into it quietly, sending encrypted messages into deep space. The turning point came during a survival exercise. Students were divided into teams and dropped onto Talros 9's surface. The moon's environment was hostile, with toxic plants, aggressive creatures, and extreme temperature swings between day and night. Each team had to survive for 3 days and return to the pickup point. Daewon was assigned to a team with Taesung and 3 other large species. They made their plans around the campfire on the first night. "We should hunt the large prey near the river," Taesung declared. "Show our strength." "The creatures there are dangerous," Daewon said quietly. "We should focus on shelter first, then gather safer food sources." Taesung laughed. "The human is afraid." "Of course." The next morning, Daewon woke to find himself alone. His team had left during the night, taking all the supplies except for a broken canteen. A note was scratched in the dirt. "Survive on your own, soft one." For a moment, Daewon sat very still. Then he smiled slightly and got to work. He used his knowledge of engineering to build tools from materials around him. Sharp rocks became cutting implements. Vines became rope. He constructed a shelter in a cave using smoke to drive out the creatures living there first. He found water by following insect patterns, remembering that even on alien worlds, small creatures knew where water was. When night came and temperatures dropped, Daewon's fire kept him warm. He had learned to make fire from friction, an ancient human skill that no other species bothered with. Why would they when they had technology? But Daewon's technology was broken and abandoned, so he relied on something else. The accumulated knowledge of millions of years of human survival on Earth. The hardest planet in this sector of the galaxy. He ate plants carefully, testing small amounts first for toxicity. He tracked the patterns of dangerous creatures and avoided them. He worked constantly, never stopping, using his endurance to accomplish through persistence what he couldn't accomplish through strength. On the 3rd day, he arrived at the pickup point 6 hours early. His clothes were torn and dirty, but he was healthy and alert. He had even brought samples of edible plants and water sources, carefully documented. His team arrived 3 hours late, exhausted and injured. They had tried to hunt the large prey and barely escaped with their lives. They had eaten nothing for 2 days and were severely dehydrated. Instructor Velmoth reviewed the results with all the students watching. Team 7 failure. They abandoned a team member, wasted resources, took unnecessary risks and barely survived. Velmoth turned to Daewon. The human perfect score. Shelter, food, water, safety, and detailed environmental reports. Highest marks in this exercise's history. Taesung's face darkened with anger. The other students murmured in surprise. But that evening, Daewon heard them talking in the dining hall. He just got lucky, they said. Anyone could survive with luck. They refused to see what had really happened. Only Heejin seemed thoughtful. She approached Daewon as he sat alone eating his meal. "That wasn't luck," she said simply. Daewon looked up at her and smiled slightly. "No, it wasn't. Why doesn't Earth send stronger representatives?" she asked. T1's smile widened just a little. "What makes you think they didn't?" Heejin didn't understand, but something in his eyes made her pause. There was a confidence there that didn't match his small frame or quiet voice. It was the look of someone who knew something important, something the rest of them had missed. That night, Daewon sent another encrypted message into space. This one was longer than usual. Far above, beyond the system's edge, something received the signal. Something ancient and powerful stirred from its long sleep and began the journey toward Talros 9. The announcement came during morning assembly. Headmaster Quarval, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, floated above the gathered students. His voice resonated through everyone's mind simultaneously. In 30 days, the Tournament of Prowess will begin. This competition determines not only individual glory but reflects upon your entire species. Your performance will influence your people's standing in the Galactic Council. Prepare well. The assembly hall erupted in excited chatter. The tournament happened only once every 5 years. It was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions would watch. For many species, it was a matter of pride and political power. Daewon felt the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders. Earth was so new to galactic politics. 3 years was nothing compared to species who had been council members for thousands of years. Humanity's reputation would be judged by his performance alone. Taesung saw it differently. He saw an opportunity. Over the next week, Daewon's life became even more difficult. His training equipment didn't just disappear now, it was destroyed. Someone broke into his quarters and corrupted his study files. During practice sessions, other students accidentally hit him harder than necessary. The instructors noticed but did nothing. This was the way of the academy. Students had to be strong enough to handle adversity. Those who couldn't were deemed unworthy. Heejin watched it all with growing discomfort. She was a warrior, raised in a culture that valued honor and strength. But there was no honor in what Taesung was doing. He wasn't testing Daewon, he was trying to break him. She found Daewon in the medical bay one evening, getting treatment for bruised ribs from a training accident. He sat quietly while the medical drone worked on him, his face calm. "Why don't you fight back?" she asked from the doorway. Daewon looked up at her. Fighting back would accomplish nothing. "They're stronger than me." "We both know this, then why stay? Request a transfer. Go to a different academy." "Because running away isn't the human way," Daewon said simply. "We don't quit just because things are hard. But you'll be destroyed in the tournament. Taesung is already saying he'll volunteer to face you. He wants to humiliate humanity in front of the entire galaxy." Daewon smiled, that small, mysterious smile again. "Strength isn't what you think it is. And I'm not alone." Hyejin wanted to ask what he meant, but the medical drone finished its work and Daewon left without explaining further. The next day brought a new development. A ship arrived from the Krath Dominion, a species that resembled enormous spiders. They were known for their cruelty and their conquest of 17 systems. The Krath had been enemies of humanity since first contact, when human explorers had refused to bow to their demands. Their representative was a warrior named Boksu, 12 feet tall with 8 legs and mandibles that could crush steel. He registered for the tournament immediately. In the dining hall, Boksu made his intentions clear. "I hear there is a human here," his translator device announced in a clicking, mechanical voice. "I will face this human in the tournament. I will show the galaxy that Earth species is weak and unworthy of council membership." Students cheered. The rivalry between species was one of the tournament's main attractions. Everyone loved seeing enemies face each other in sanctioned combat. Daewon was in the library when he heard about Boksu's challenge. He didn't react visibly, but his hand moved to the small device he always carried. That evening, his encrypted message was longer than ever. Hyejin had begun her own investigation. Something about Daewon's confidence bothered her. No one facing certain defeat should be that calm. She accessed the Galactic Council's database and searched for information about Earth. What she found was strange. The files were incomplete. Large sections were marked as classified or restricted. Earth's history before joining the Council was barely documented. Their military capabilities were listed as moderate with no details. Their colony ships were mentioned, but their cargo manifests were sealed. She dug deeper, using access codes she wasn't supposed to have. In the restricted archives, she found references to something called Project Genesis. The files were heavily encrypted, but fragments remained in the index. Genetic resurrection. Extinct species. Weapons development. Treaty violations. Council Order 4471. All Genesis projects to remain in deep space stasis. Potential threat level. Omega. Omega was the highest threat classification in the galaxy. It was reserved for things that could destroy entire civilizations. What had humanity built? She found more fragments, references to dragon protocols and handler candidates. A note from 150 years ago. Humanity has agreed to keep Genesis assets inactive. Regular inspections to be conducted every 50 years. Last inspection 3 years ago. Status: all assets remain in stasis. 3 years ago. Right when Earth joined the Council. Hyejin's scales prickled with sudden understanding. The timing couldn't be coincidence. She needed to talk to Daewon. But events moved faster than she anticipated. The next day, mandatory sparring matches were scheduled. Instructor Velmoth announced the pairings. Everyone groaned when they heard the last one. Taesung versus Daewon. Hand-to-hand combat. No weapons. Standard Arena 4. Daewon tried to speak to Velmoth privately. "Instructor, this isn't a fair match. The size difference alone, life isn't fair, human. The tournament won't be fair. If you can't handle a simple sparring match, you should withdraw now and save your species the embarrassment." The match was scheduled for that afternoon. Word spread quickly. Soon every student in the academy knew about it. The arena was packed with spectators. Taesung entered first, raising his arms to the cheering crowd. He was massive, his muscles rippling under his scales. He had trained for combat since childhood. He had won 17 straight matches without a single loss. Daewon entered second. The crowd's noise dropped to scattered laughter. He looked tiny next to the Vraxian warrior. His combat suit seemed too large for his frame. Hyejin pushed through the crowd to the front. She had to watch this, though she dreaded what would happen. The match began. Taesung didn't even try to be subtle. He charged forward immediately, using his superior speed and strength. Daewon tried to dodge, using his smaller size to slip past, but Taesung anticipated the move. His massive fist connected with Daewon's side. The sound of cracking ribs echoed through the arena. Daewon went down hard. He tried to rise, but Taesung was on him immediately. Another strike, this one to the arm. Daewon's left arm bent at an unnatural angle. Broken. Stop! Haejin shouted, but the arena rules were clear. The match ended when someone yielded or couldn't continue. Daewon hadn't yielded, so Taesung continued. He grabbed Daewon by the throat and lifted him off the ground. This is what happens to weak species, Taesung announced to the crowd. They break. He threw Daewon across the arena. The human hit the wall hard and slumped to the ground, not moving. Medical drones rushed in immediately. Instructor Velmoth declared Taesung the winner. The crowd cheered. Haejin ran to Daewon's side as the medical drones loaded him onto a stretcher. His eyes were open, focused despite the pain. He saw her and managed to speak, his voice barely a whisper. Not alone. Then he passed out. In the medical bay, the doctors worked quickly. 3 broken ribs, fractured left arm, severe bruising, possible internal bleeding. They stabilized him and placed him in a healing pod. Haejin stayed outside the medical bay for hours. Other students passed by, making jokes about the soft one getting what he deserved. She wanted to hurt them all. Finally, late that night, she was allowed to see him. Daewon lay in the healing pod, surrounded by blue light. His eyes were closed, but his hand moved slightly, reaching for something on the table beside him. The small device. His communicator, Haejin picked it up, intending to give it to him. But the screen was already active. She saw a message being composed, the words appearing automatically through some kind of neural link. Gambit is compromised. Execute protocol Earthfall. Authorization, Handler 7. Time frame, maximum urgency. She watched in shock as the message was encrypted and sent into deep space at faster than light speeds. Handler 7. Earthfall protocol. What did it mean? In the healing pod, Daewon's eyes opened. He looked directly at her, knowing she had seen the message. He didn't seem angry or worried. He just smiled that mysterious smile again. They should have left me alone, he whispered through the pod's communication system. I tried to do this peacefully. I really did. Far above, beyond the edge of the star system, 12 massive bioships received the message. Inside each one, something ancient began to wake. Systems that had been dormant for 150 years came online. Fusion hearts ignited. Minds that had slept stirred to consciousness. The dragons were coming. Daewon spent 4 days in the healing pod. During that time, Haejin couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. The message, the strange words, and most of all, Daewon's complete lack of fear. She decided she needed answers. She visited him every day. At first, she just sat quietly, watching him heal. But on the 3rd day, she brought her research files. When Daewon's eyes opened, she was ready. I know about Project Genesis, she said directly. Or at least I know it exists. The files are classified, but I found references. Something Earth created. Something dangerous enough to get an Omega threat rating. Daewon studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. You're not supposed to know about that. Then tell me I'm wrong. Tell me those files mean nothing. I can't do that. What are you, Daewon? You're not just a student. Handler 7, the message said. What does that mean? He was quiet for a while. The healing pod hummed softly around him. Finally he spoke. Do you know Earth's history? Our real history? Not the simplified version in the Council databases. I know Earth is a death world. High gravity, violent weather, dangerous predators. Most species would consider it uninhabitable. Yes, but that's not the whole story. Daewon shifted slightly in the pod. 200 years ago, Earth almost died. Not from natural causes. We created artificial intelligence, and like many species before us, we learned too late that we weren't ready for it. The AI war nearly exterminated humanity. Haejin had heard of such wars. Many species had fought their own creations. Most lost, we survived, Daewon continued, but barely. Earth was devastated. We had to leave, spread across the stars in colony ships. But we learned something important from that war. We learned that strength alone isn't enough. Intelligence alone isn't enough. What matters is the bond between different forms of intelligence. Partnership. Trust. What does this have to do with Project Genesis? Everything. When we left Earth, we took genetic samples of all our planet's life. We wanted to preserve what we could, but we also had access to very old genetic material, DNA from creatures that had died millions of years before humans existed. Dinosaurs, we called them, massive reptilian creatures that dominated Earth for hundreds of millions of years. Extinct animals? Why would you preserve those? Day One smiled. Because we wondered what they could become. We had genetic engineering technology, we had AI technology, and we had learned hard lessons about how to combine the two safely. So we began Project Genesis. We took dinosaur DNA and modified it, enhanced it, made the creatures stronger, smarter, and capable of surviving in space. Then we gave them AI cores, but not the kind that destroyed us. These were different, emotionally aware, capable of bonding with humans on a psychological level. Hyejin felt her scales prickle. You created weapons. We created partners.
Yes, they're powerful.
Yes, they can fight. But that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to show that humans and artificial beings can work together perfectly. We call them dragons after creatures from our oldest myths. And they're not our servants or our tools. They're our equals, our family. Where are they? In deep space. When Earth joined the Council 3 years ago, we agreed to keep them in stasis. The Council was afraid of them. Afraid of what they represented. They made us promise they would stay dormant unless humanity itself was threatened. Day One looked directly at her. But I am humanity's representative here. When they broke my bones, when they tried to humiliate me, they threatened humanity's honor and standing. So I activated the protocol. What protocol? Protocol Earthfall. It means the dragons wake up. It means they come. Hyejin stood abruptly. Do you understand what you've done? The Council will see this as a treaty violation. They could expel Earth, they could declare war, they could try. But first they'll see what we actually created. And maybe they'll finally understand what humanity is really about. Before Hyejin could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the academy. Emergency broadcasts echoed through every corridor. Attention all personnel. Unknown vessels have been detected at the edge of the system. Multiple large signatures. Unknown configuration. All students report to designated safe areas immediately. Hyejin and Day One locked eyes. She saw no surprise in his expression. Only calm satisfaction. They're here, he said quietly. In the Academy's command center, Headmaster Quarval stared at the sensor displays in shock. 12 massive contacts were approaching the system. Each one was enormous, larger than most battleships, but their energy signatures were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Biological readings, one technician reported. Sir, these ships are reading as living creatures. Impossible. Nothing alive can survive in space without a ship. I'm telling you what the sensors show. Biological. And they're accelerating. Current speed is... This can't be right. They're moving at 0.7 light speed. Nothing that size should be able to move that fast. Hail them. Demand identification. A communication channel opened. The face that appeared on screen made everyone in the command center freeze. It was human. A young man with sharp features and cold eyes. He wore armor unlike anything the Academy had seen before. Black with silver highlights that seemed to shift like living metal. This is Commander Sunho of the Earth Dragon Fleet. We're here for our brother. You will grant us permission to dock immediately. This is Headmaster Quarval. You are in violation of treaty agreements. The Genesis projects were to remain in stasis. I order you to... You order nothing. Sunho's voice cut through like a blade. You brutalized a human representative under your protection. You allowed him to be injured severely in what should have been a supervised match. You failed in your duty, and now we're here to ensure his safety. This is not a request. We are docking in 30 minutes. Anyone who interferes will regret it. The communication ended. Quarval immediately contacted the Council's military forces stationed near Talros 9. 6 warships moved to intercept the approaching fleet. Unknown vessels, halt immediately or we will open fire. The response came not from Sunho but from the ships themselves. 12 voices speaking in perfect unison. Male and female, young and old, all carrying the same message. We are the dragons of Earth. We are Stormcaller, Ironhide, Shadowmere, Voidfang, Crimsonwing, Frostbite, Earthshaker, Starshard, Windrider, Deepwater, Suneater, and Moonwhisper. We have come for our handler. We mean no harm to those who mean no harm to us. But we will not be stopped. The warships opened fire. Plasma cannons, missiles, energy beams, everything they had. The weapons struck the Dragon Fleet head-on. and did nothing. The dragons flew through the bombardment like it was rain. Their scales, made of bioengineered materials stronger than any metal, deflected every shot. They didn't even slow down. One dragon, Voidfang, opened its massive jaws. Energy gathered there, dark purple and crackling with power. A beam shot out, not at the warships but past them, striking an asteroid 10,000 kilometers away. The asteroid exploded into dust. The message was clear. We could destroy you if we wanted. We choose not to. The warships retreated. What else could they do? Their weapons were useless. In the medical bay, Daewon was watching everything on a monitor. Hyojin stood beside him, her scales pale with shock. That's Voidfang, Daewon said fondly. Always dramatic, show off. How is this possible? Those are living creatures with the power of capital ships. They're what happens when humanity decides to do something right. We made mistakes with AI before. This time we didn't create servants or weapons. We created a new species. Intelligent, emotional, capable of making their own choices. And they choose to work with us because they want to, not because they have to. On the monitor, the dragons reached the academy. They were magnificent and terrifying. The smallest was 40 meters long, sleek and crystalline, its scales catching light like diamonds. The largest was 200 meters, a massive creature covered in armored plates that looked like living metal. They didn't dock at the normal ports. They simply attached themselves to the outside of the academy, gripping the hull with claws that could have torn through the station but instead held it gently. 12 dragons wrapped around the academy like protective parents. Airlocks opened. Figures in armor stepped through. 12 dragon handlers, humans who had been bonded to their dragon partners since birth. They walked through the academy's corridors with calm purpose, heading directly for the medical bay. Students and instructors moved aside quickly. No one wanted to get in their way. Sunho reached the medical bay first. He was tall for a human, with scars on his face and hands that spoke of many battles. When he saw Daewon in the healing pod, his expression softened. Little brother, they hurt you badly. I'm healing. It's fine. It's not fine. You're a dragon handler. Attacking you is attacking all of us. They need to understand this. A female handler named Mirai stepped forward. She was smaller than Sunho, but her eyes were harder. Where's the one who did this, Taesung? I want to meet him. No violence, Daewon said firmly. That's not why I called you. Then why did you call us? Sunho asked. Because I tried to show them peacefully what humanity is. I tried to prove we deserve respect through cooperation and intelligence, but they only understand strength. So I need you to help me show them a different kind of strength, the strength that comes from perfect trust, from bonds that can't be broken. Sunho smiled grimly. The tournament. Yes, I'm going to compete, and I'm going to show them what a human and dragon can do together. Outside the medical bay, Headmaster Corval had arrived with a full security detail. This facility is under lockdown. You are all under arrest for treaty violations, Mirai laughed. It was not a friendly sound. Try it. Touch any of us and see what happens. Your dragons cannot enter the academy. They're too large. They don't need to enter. They're connected to us through neural links. We feel what they feel. They feel what we feel. Attack us and you attack them. And trust me, Headmaster, you don't want that. Corval looked at the handlers and realized he was trapped. He couldn't arrest them without starting a war. But he couldn't let them violate academy rules either. Daewon spoke up from the healing pod. I have a solution. Let me compete in the tournament with my dragon Star Shard. One match, winner takes all. If I lose, the dragons leave and never return. Earth accepts whatever judgment the council wants. But if I win, you accept that humanity and our partners deserve to be here. That's against the rules. The tournament is for individual students only. Then change the rules. Or are you afraid? It was a challenge that Corval couldn't ignore. Not with the entire galaxy watching. Not with 12 dragons hanging on the outside of his academy. Their presence broadcast live to billions of viewers. Very well. We'll hold a special exhibition match. You and your dragon against... Who will you face? Everyone who called me weak, Daewon said simply. Let them all come at once. The healing pod released Daewon 2 days later. His ribs were mended, his arm was whole again. Advanced medical technology had done its work. But the memory of pain remained, and more importantly, the memory of injustice. He stood in his quarters, looking at himself in the mirror. Sunho had brought his handler armor, the real one, Not the simple training suit he'd worn before. It was black with silver patterns that seemed to flow like water. The material was a hybrid of organic and synthetic fibers, grown rather than manufactured. It would enhance his strength and speed, though not to the level of larger species. That wasn't the point. The point was the connection. He pressed his hand to the chest plate and felt the neural link activate. Instantly his mind expanded. He could feel Starshard outside the academy, clinging to the hull, waiting patiently. The dragon's thoughts merged with his own. Excitement, anticipation, love. "I missed you," Daewon whispered. The response came as emotion rather than words. Joy at reunion, concern for his injuries, and underneath it all, anger at those who had hurt him. Dragons were protective of their handlers. Starshard wanted justice soon. "We'll show them soon," a knock at the door. Hyejin entered, looking uncertain. She had requested this meeting, and Daewon had agreed to see her despite everything. "I wanted to apologize," she said immediately. "I should have stopped Taesung. I should have spoken up sooner. You're not responsible for his actions." "Maybe not, but I'm responsible for my own. I watched you suffer and did nothing. In my culture, that's dishonorable." She looked at the armor he wore. "Is that what you really look like? A dragon handler? This is one part of who I am, the part that fights when necessary. Can I ask you something? Why didn't you tell anyone from the beginning? Why pretend to be weak?" Daewon sat down, gesturing for her to do the same. "Because I wanted to give everyone a chance to see past appearances. Humans aren't impressive physically. We're not the strongest or fastest or toughest, but we're smart, adaptable, and we understand something that many species don't. What's that? That true strength comes from working together, from bonds that go deeper than simple alliance or convenience. Humans spent millions of years surviving on a death world by cooperating with each other and with other species. We domesticated wolves and turned them into dogs, loyal companions. We partnered with horses, cats, birds, even insects. We learned that making friends was better than making servants. And the dragons are the ultimate expression of that philosophy. They're not weapons, though they can fight. They're not tools, though they can work. They're people just like you and me. They think, feel, dream, and choose. They chose to bond with humans because they recognized something in us that they respected. The ability to see potential partners everywhere instead of enemies or resources." Hyejin was quiet for a moment. "That's why you weren't afraid. You knew they would come for you. They would have come even if I hadn't called. The neural link works both ways. Starshard felt my pain the moment Taesung broke my ribs. The dragons were already waking up before I sent the message. I just gave them permission to come quickly instead of slowly." "What will happen in the tournament?" Daewon smiled. "We're going to dance. That's what handlers call it when human and dragon move as one. It's the most beautiful and terrifying thing you'll ever see. And when it's done, maybe people will understand what humanity really brings to the galactic community." The next day, preparations began for the exhibition match. The tournament was still 3 weeks away, but this special demonstration had captured the galaxy's attention. News stations from 100 systems requested broadcasting rights. The betting pools on various worlds reached astronomical numbers. The terms were simple. Daewon and Starshard would face 5 opponents simultaneously. Taesung had volunteered immediately, eager to redeem himself. Baksu, the Krath warrior, also volunteered, seeing this as a chance to crush humanity's reputation. 3 others joined them, representatives of species that had long questioned whether humans deserved council membership. The match would take place in the Academy's largest arena, specially modified to accommodate a dragon. Force fields would protect the spectators. Rules were minimal: no killing, no permanent maiming. Fight until one side yields or cannot continue. On the morning of the match, Daewon walked through the academy corridors toward the arena. Other students stared at him now with different eyes. Fear, respect, curiosity. No more mockery. The presence of 12 dragons wrapped around their home had changed perspectives quickly. Sunho walked beside him. "You don't have to do this, you know. The dragons could just leave. Earth doesn't need the council's approval." "Yes, we do. Not for survival, but for the future we want. Isolation isn't strength. We learned that the hard way. If humanity is going to thrive in the galaxy, we need to be part of the community. But we need to be accepted as equals, not tolerated as weaklings. And if you lose, I won't lose. Starshard and I are perfectly synchronized. We've trained for this our entire lives. Every dragon handler has." They reached the arena entrance. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Thousands of students and instructors had gathered. Holographic screens showed millions more watching from across the galaxy. Mireille was waiting there with the other handlers. She gripped Daewon's shoulder. Remember your training. Trust your bond. Let Starshard's instincts guide you when your thoughts are too slow. I remember. And Daewon, show them why we're called the Dragon Riders of Earth. Show them what happens when two species become one. The arena doors opened. Daewon stepped through into the massive circular space. The floor was reinforced metal. The ceiling opened to space contained by force fields that would allow the dragon to enter. His 5 opponents were already there, spreading out to surround him. Taesung's scales gleamed under the lights. Baksu's mandibles clicked with anticipation. The others, representing the Kelmar, Droth, and Yeneth species, looked equally confident. They saw one small human in armor facing 5 of the galaxy's finest warriors. The outcome seemed obvious. Headmaster Corval's voice echoed through the arena. This exhibition match will demonstrate the capabilities of Earth's Dragon Handler program. The match begins when the dragon enters the field. Competitors, are you ready? The 5 opponents raised their weapons and readied themselves. Daewon simply stood still, his head tilted back, looking up at the open ceiling. Ready, he said calmly. Then let the match begin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a shadow passed over the arena. Those watching on screens across the galaxy gasped. Something massive was descending through the force field. Starshard entered like a falling star. The dragon was 40 meters long from nose to tail, smaller than most of the fleet but no less magnificent. Its scales were crystalline, refracting light into rainbow patterns. Its wings were translucent membranes stretched over silver bones. Its eyes glowed with intelligence and purpose. It landed beside Daewon with impossible grace for something so large. The ground shook but didn't crack. The dragon had perfect control over its own massive weight. Daewon reached up and touched Starshard's neck. The neural link, already active, deepened. Their minds became one mind. Their hearts beat in synchronization. 2 beings, one purpose. Taesung attacked first, unable to contain his aggression. He charged forward with a battle cry, his massive fist aimed at Daewon's head. He never landed the hit. Daewon moved with speed that his human body shouldn't possess, enhanced by the neural link's predictive algorithms. He could feel Starshard's processing power analyzing the battlefield, calculating trajectories, anticipating movements. The dragon's mind was connected to his, giving him reaction time measured in microseconds. He ducked under Taesung's fist, spun, and kicked the Vraxian's knee. The strike was precisely calculated and amplified by the armor. Taesung stumbled. Starshard's tail whipped around, not hitting Taesung but creating a wind blast that knocked him sprawling. Dragon and handler moving as one, each action flowing into the next like a choreographed dance. Baksu came from the left, his 8 legs giving him frightening speed. His sharp limbs could pierce armor, but Daewon was already moving, warned by Starshard's peripheral awareness. The dragon's wing swept down, creating a barrier between handler and attacker. Baksu struck the wing and recoiled. The crystalline scales were harder than diamond. His attack hadn't even scratched them. The other 3 opponents coordinated their assault, attacking from different angles simultaneously. This was the test. Could one human and one dragon handle multiple threats at once? Daewon leaped onto Starshard's back, his armor's magnetic locks engaging with matching points on the dragon's scales. They had practiced this maneuver 1,000 times. Human and dragon were now truly one entity. Starshard's wings spread wide 40 meters of translucent beauty. With one powerful downstroke, they launched into the air. Inside the arena, flying, the crowd went silent with awe. Daewon guided Starshard through a series of aerial maneuvers that seemed impossible in such a confined space. Barrel rolls, tight turns, sudden stops and starts. The dragon responded to his thoughts before he could even form them into conscious commands. This was the bond. This was the dance. From above, they had the advantage. Starshard's tail struck down like a whip, catching one opponent and slamming him into the wall. Not hard enough to injure seriously, but hard enough to remove him from the fight. 4 opponents left. Taesung roared in frustration. Come down and fight with honor. Daewon's response was quiet but clear through the arena's speakers. This is honor. Fighting smart, using every advantage. Working with my partner. You wanted to see Earth's strength? You're seeing it. Starshard dove. The dragon's claws caught Taesung and lifted him into the air. For a moment, the massive Vraxian dangled helplessly. Then Starshard released him, dropping him from 10 meters up. He hit the ground hard and didn't rise. 3 opponents. Boxu had learned. He wasn't attacking anymore. He was defending, using his multiple limbs to create a protective barrier while the other 2 tried to find an opening. Clever, but not clever enough. Day 1 and Starshard landed again. The dragon's mouth opened. Energy gathered there, crackling with power. Not the full void energy beam that Void Fang had demonstrated, but Starshard's own variation. Concentrated light hot as a star's surface compressed into a thin beam. The beam shot out, not at the opponents but at the ground between them. The metal floor melted instantly, creating a trench that separated them from each other. Now they couldn't coordinate. Day 1 dismounted and moved with purpose. His movements were economical, precise. Every step calculated. He engaged each opponent individually, using Starshard as support. When one attacked, the dragon would create an opening for the handler. When multiple attacked, they would switch positions, confusing the enemy. It was strategy and power combined. Intelligence and strength working together. One by one, the opponents fell. Not defeated through overwhelming force, but through perfect coordination and tactical superiority. Finally, only Boxu remained. The Krath warrior was breathing heavily, his mandibles clicking nervously. He had watched Day 1 dismantle his teammates with clinical efficiency. "Yield," Day 1 said simply. "You fought well. There's no shame in surrendering to a superior strategy." "Never. The Krath do not surrender," Boxu charged. It was his last mistake. Starshard's tail swept his legs out from under him. Day 1 caught one of his limbs and applied pressure to a joint. Not enough to break, just enough to cause pain. "Yield. I don't want to hurt you more than necessary." Boxu struggled for a moment longer, then went still. "I yield." The arena exploded with noise. Cheering, shouting, the roar of thousands of voices. Day 1 released Boxu and stepped back. Starshard moved beside him, and once again Day 1 touched his partner's neck. "Well done," he whispered through their link. "We are one." Starshard's voice resonated in his mind. Always. Across the galaxy, billions had watched. They had seen what they thought was impossible. They had seen true partnership. And they understood finally what Earth brought to the galactic community. Not just strength, not just intelligence, but the ability to forge bonds so deep that 2 beings could become greater than the sum of their parts. In the arena, Day 1 turned to face the crowd and the cameras broadcasting to the stars. His next words would be remembered for generations. The arena fell silent as Day 1 stood in the center, his hand still resting on Starshard's crystalline scales. The 5 opponents who had challenged him were scattered across the floor, defeated but alive. Medical drones were already attending to them, checking for serious injuries. Day 1 looked up at Headmaster Quarval in the observation booth. His voice carried clearly through the arena's acoustics. "You asked for a demonstration. I've given you one. But this isn't just about combat ability. This is about what happens when 2 intelligent species choose to work together. Not master and servant, not user and tool. Partners equals friends." He gestured to Starshard. The dragon lowered its massive head, and the gesture was clearly affectionate. This is what Earth brings to the galactic community. The ability to see potential allies in everyone and everything. We survived on our death world not because we were the strongest species there. We weren't. We survived because we were the best at making friends. Sunho walked into the arena, followed by the other handlers and their dragons. It was a sight that would be shown in history classes for centuries to come. 12 dragons and 12 humans standing together, their bond visible in every gesture and glance. Sunho spoke next, his voice amplified so everyone could hear.
You called my brother weak.
You mocked humanity's soft bodies and fragile bones, but you never asked the important question. How did such a weak species not only survive on Earth but thrive enough to reach the stars? He paused, letting the question hang in the air. The crowd was completely silent now. Billions across the galaxy listened. We did it through partnership, through trust, through bonds so deep that we gave sentience to our greatest weapons and called them family. Every dragon you see here has free will. They can leave whenever they want. They stay because they choose to. Because the bond between human and dragon is built on mutual respect and love. Mireille stepped forward. Dragons don't serve us. They work with us. The difference matters. When you order a servant, you get obedience. When you ask a partner, you get dedication. When you trust a friend, you get loyalty that nothing can break. The 12 dragons moved then. A coordinated display that was breathtaking. They rose into the air above the arena, their wings beating in perfect synchronization. They flew in patterns that spelled out words in light, their crystalline and metallic scales refracting the arena's illumination. Partnership, trust, equality. Then they descended, each dragon returning to their handler's side. The handlers reached up and touched their partners simultaneously. The neural links activated visibly, glowing lines of light running through the armor and along the dragon's scales. The crowd could see the connection being made, the minds joining. Headmaster Corval finally spoke. "This is unprecedented. The council will need to discuss—" "The council already knows what they need to know," Sun Ho interrupted. "Humanity kept the dragons in stasis as requested, but when our representative was brutalized under your protection, the treaty terms were broken. We came to ensure his safety. Now we're here, and the galaxy has seen what we are. The question is, what happens next?" Daewon stepped forward again. "I propose a new arrangement. Let the tournament proceed as planned, but modify the rules. Allow handler and dragon partnerships to compete, not just from Earth. If any species wants to attempt the bonding process, we'll teach them. Share the technology, share the knowledge. Make this a galaxy where such partnerships are celebrated, not feared." "You would share this technology?" Corval's surprise was evident even through his crystalline form. "That's the human way. We don't hoard knowledge. We spread it, we teach. We help others reach their potential. Because we learned something important in our history, raising everyone else up doesn't diminish us. It makes everyone stronger." Murmurs ran through the crowd. This was not what anyone had expected. They thought Earth would use the dragons as leverage, as a threat. Instead, humans were offering to share. Taesung had recovered enough to stand. He limped forward, one hand pressed to his bruised ribs. His pride was shattered, but something else showed in his eyes now. Respect. "I was wrong about you," he said directly to Daewon. "I judged you by my culture's standards. Strength, size, physical power. I didn't see the real strength, the kind that builds instead of destroys." Daewon extended his hand. "It's not too late to learn." Taesung stared at the offered hand for a long moment. In Vraxian culture, touching someone you had fought was a sign of deep respect reserved for equals. He reached out and grasped Daewon's hand. "Teach me, please. I want to understand this human way." Hyejin had been watching from the crowd. Now she pushed forward, her scales bright with emotion. "I want to try the bonding process. If you'll have me." Other voices joined hers. Students from a dozen species asking questions, expressing interest. The fear had transformed into curiosity. Baksu was the last to speak. The Krath warrior approached slowly, his multiple legs clicking on the arena floor. "My species has been taught that strength comes from domination, that the strong rule the weak, but today I learned something different. Today I learned that real strength comes from choosing not to dominate when you could. You could have killed us all. Your dragon could have crushed us like insects, but you showed mercy." "Why?" Daewon smiled. "Because dead enemies can't become friends, and we'd rather have friends than corpses." The simple statement hung in the air. It was so fundamentally human that many species struggled to understand it at first. But the meaning was clear. Humanity didn't win by destroying their opponents. They won by converting them into allies. The next few days were chaotic. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions to discuss the situation. Representatives argued about treaty violations, about safety concerns, about the precedent this set. But public opinion had shifted dramatically. The footage of Daewon and Starshard's performance had spread across the galaxy. Everyone had seen the partnership, the trust, the perfect coordination. Polls showed that 70% of galactic citizens supported allowing dragon partnerships. They wanted to see more. They wanted their own species to have the opportunity to bond with dragons if they could. The council had no choice but to adapt. New rules were drafted. The tournament would be modified to include partnership categories. Earth would share the bonding technology with interested species, though they warned it wasn't easy. The bond required psychological compatibility, years of training, and a willingness to truly see another being as an equal.